Hey, it's good hearing that music on this Wednesday afternoon. That means it's time for Helping Seniors of Brevard. I'm John Harper. Let's get the show underway as I introduce the host of the show and the executive director of Helping Seniors of Brevard, Kerry Fink. Good afternoon, Kerry.
Hey, good afternoon, John Harper. What a pleasure it always is to be on the radio together and sharing lunch hour every Wednesday as we talk Helping Seniors Radio. And, you know, we're getting fairly close to that big day now as we're in the middle of the holiday season and having all kinds of fun. And in fact, one of the things I want to make sure I do right now is invite you to our big festivities tomorrow. We are actually going to be enjoying a great, fun morning. We're calling it, I think it's probably our fourth or fifth annual holiday festivities. And our friends over at the Residences at Zahn, that beautiful independent living facility that's connected there with Zahn Assisted Living Beachside and Memory Care Facility. This is the independent wing, that beautiful four-story building that's got that great lounge on top, and they're going to turn that over to us. And tomorrow morning between 10:30 and 12 noon, we're going to be enjoying just some great fun up there. It's our annual holiday get-together for all the friends of Helping Seniors, and you are invited. We've got fun, we've got music, we've got entertainment from Uncle Nick Chirico. If you were there at some of our events before, you know how much fun he is. I'm sure he'll come decked out in his Santa cap and make all the, the spirits happy, and it'll be just a fun morning out there. So we do ask if you RSVP, so the chefs in the kitchen know exactly how many goodies to prepare. You can do that at this point. It's not too late. You can just call us on our Helping Seniors number. I'm going to give you a second to grab a pencil so you can jot that down. It's 321-473-7770. I'll say that again, 321-473-7770. And again, that's tomorrow, 10:30 to noon, Helping Seniors Holiday Fun at the Residences at Zahn. It's our annual get-together. The Residence at Zahn's on Beachside, if you're not familiar. It's right there on South Patrick Drive, 1898 South Patrick Drive is actually the street. And it's a beautiful location. We're so grateful to Greg Kennedy, Alfredo, and the entire crew over there for inviting us back to have such a fun time. And I'm going to ask our guest, Dr. Lee Sheldon. How are you today? Are you going to join us?
I will join you. Hi, Kerry. How you doing?
I am great. I'm excited. It's going to be fun tomorrow.
I bet it is. I wish I could attend. I won't be there.
Oh, no.
Sorry.
Well, it'll be a great time. You know, we have been so we're coming out of the Thanksgiving season and moving into all the great holidays this month. And I was talking with Karen Warnland, who basically she's like our center director for Joe's Senior Resource Center and kind of keeps everything floating. She goes, Kerry, I really want to do something nice, and I want to recognize, is it okay if we do it at the holiday party? Because she's built up such a team of volunteers. In fact, that's becoming a thing now. I think we've got 10 volunteers who are helping us at the center, keep that center running. And I think we have a training session coming up. I think it's like the next week, where we're going to be training 7 more folks. And it's a great thing. If you're looking for something to get involved in that you can feel good, you're making a difference. You know, Dr. Sheldon, you've been involved in helping seniors literally from the day Joe Steckler, our founder, and he's chairman emeritus, he got the whole thing started, and that you were actually helping him back in Brevard Alzheimer's days when he was building up the Joe's Clubs and everything. But we live in a county that's a quarter of the folks are over 65, and literally half of the folks are over the age of 50. So we always say, like, this is the perfect place that really needs something like Helping Seniors, Dr. Sheldon.
Yeah, it's funny. When I got involved with Joe, I didn't quite qualify for the senior part of it. Now I'm well qualified. So you could say I did this selfishly, and maybe I did. But, the reason you do that is because you want to help Joe. Joe is the one who puts himself out there. Joe is the one who got you involved, who got all of us involved, Jim and John, who are on the line with us today, got us all involved because You don't say no to Joe. You just say, oh, Joe's doing it. Well, we've got to help. And Joe had a vision. He started this from scratch. There was nothing here with regard to helping seniors of Brevard. This was all Joe's project. And we all helped him. And now you're the executive director. As John is the president. I mean, so we've got an in-house organization. What's interesting is what you said about Karen. You know, Karen gets volunteers involved and gives them something where they feel productive. And it's not just they feel productive, they are productive because of the numbers of calls and the numbers of events that we have. You look at our calendar, the calendar is just loaded with events, every single month. So there are opportunities. People feel good about it. They're helping others. They're learning more about what the resources are in this community, which is substantial. You know, Brevard County is a great place to live. And so they're, by all means, call the office, talk with Karen. And if you are so inclined, we have a job for you that will make you feel good, that will make you feel wanted, make you feel productive, and you'll leave with a smile on your face.
Yeah, you said that so well, because I was thinking, Karen really has a gift about, I don't know, I call it kind of like a gift of administration, because she knows how to pull all that together and just keep it flowing smoothly. And the volunteers love Karen, and she loves them right back. And it's so important, because I was thinking, Dr. Sheldon, when you said, when you first started helping Joe, and we always joke, just like John Harper is the guy who got Joe started on radio when Joe was wanting to try to get the word out about everything he was doing with Brevard Alzheimer's back in the day, and you got him started out on TV, because in those days you were doing a TV show and you invited him to be a guest on your show. But I was thinking, like you said, I wasn't even a senior at that time, but that's actually one of the plug lines we use a lot. We say in Brevard County, you either are a senior just by the demographics, or you love and care for a senior, or just give yourself a year or two and you'll be a senior. So you might as well focus in. And hopefully, if we're doing our job right, we're equipping you with information that's going to help you navigate, because that's what we do. We do senior navigation. People call us on that helpline. People are reading the articles that we publish in the Senior Seed magazine. They're catching the radio show. They're catching the TV shows. And every place we get out, if there's an opportunity for us to talk about things that are relevant to seniors, that's why we have all these programs like the Knowledge College for Aging. We do the Wellness Series. We do all these different things because our intention is to help you be as successful as you can in the aging process. And Dr. Sheldon, I've talked to Joe so many times about this. As a Kerry, getting older isn't easy, and and we've also joked and said it's on the job training. The best you can do is maybe do some research ahead of time so that you're kind of prepared for some of the things you might run into along the way.
Yeah, it's true, and the advantage of Joe is Joe has navigated this before. And so in terms of our going out and finding resources within the community, finding communities and municipalities which might help us get funding, advocating for seniors by talking with different governmental groups. I mean, that's where Joe has been. That's where he lived his life after he left the Navy and came here, did that for Alzheimer's. Then, of course, has done it for helping seniors of Brevard for what is this? Our 13th year, 14th year?
Yeah, we're now 14 going into 15, because it's pretty incredible when you think about it. And the need has only grown, because I always tell people whenever I give a little talk about helping seniors, I said, there's three things you got to factor. Number one, there's just flat more seniors. And so when Joe, was first talking about this all those years ago, it shows you how visionary he has been, because, there were a lot of seniors then, but it's only increasing because, number one, I think we're in the peak year where people are turning 65, somebody told me. So we got all the boomers who are now officially becoming seniors, if you want to use 65 as some kind of a marker for that. But then people are just flat living longer. It's not unusual. People are living into their early hundreds. And so the seniors, there's just more seniors because of that. And then, of course, living in Florida, everybody wants to come to Florida. And I agree, it's a great place to be. But those three factors really causing the senior population to just continue to grow. And that's why what we do is so important. And what you do, Dr. Sheldon, in your practice is so important, because we've talked about this. One of the real basic tenets of helping seniors is Joe has always been really strong on the idea that you've got to have these local connections, right? You see these ads on TV, 1-800 call, I don't know, it could be your estate plan, call 1-800 for your Medicare, call 1-800 for your dentures, whatever the topic is. And Joe has always said you really have to look for somebody local that you can get to know, get to trust, because there's excellent resources in our community, but you got to know where they are. And Dr. Sheldon, that's what you and your team have done all these years. We often joke about you being like the father of dental implants because you kind of like heralded that whole age coming in as you have had your practice here on Sarno Road for years and years and years. And I love the fact that every so often we get a chance to get together and talk about things, because one of the things that I really found so important about getting to know you is that I was raised with those commercials on TV that always tell you if you brush your teeth, you're not going to get cavities. And I really didn't have a concept of what a periodontist does or means until Joe introduced us. And then we start to learn about, wow, it's not really about the cavities per se. It's really about what's going on with your overall mouth health. And so I love the opportunity when we get together and talk about things, because that's such an important part of your health. And we've done whole shows, Dr. Sheldon, where we've talked about the fact that the mouth, so goes the mouth, so could possibly go the rest of your body.
Oh, it's true, because if we look at it, was just something I was reading just before we started recording today, and that had to do very much with inflammation of the body, and showing through a blood test called the C-reactive protein, which is a measure of inflammation in the blood, and looking at the number of people, number of studies who showed high levels of inflammation before periodontal treatment and lower levels of inflammation in this CRP after periodontal treatment. And of course, CRP inflammation is the watchword for every chronic disease that we have. And so whether we're talking about heart disease, or we're talking about Alzheimer's disease, we're talking about arthritis, any of these chronic degenerative diseases, periodontal disease is one of those, and 42% of adults in the United States have periodontal disease. And so if we can get rid of that source of infection, it isn't just saving the teeth, which of course is the primary reason you do it, but it's also reducing inflammation of the body. And by reducing the inflammation of the body gives you better opportunities in other aspects of your health, not just the mouth.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that's so we've had this conversation so often about the fact that having really good diagnostics and tools that help you kind of figure out what's going on in somebody's mouth. One of the worst things is if you walk into a dentist office and say, I've got some pain, what's going on? And then they poke around a little bit and they really can't tell you what's happening. It's very frustrating when you're on the patient side of the chair. And I know that's really what our topic is going to be about today. And of course, you're going to be writing about it in the Senior Scene, in the Helping Seniors newsletter and Senior Scene. But we're really going to spend some time today and talk about dental x-rays. And I always, whenever we talk about x-rays, I always have somehow my mind goes into science fiction realm, and it feels like there's something really sci-fi about all that. But I guess maybe a place to start, I know it's important because when they can take a picture, they kind of can get a much better handle on what's going on. But where do you even begin? How did x-rays become a thing in dental work?
Well, x-rays were developed well over 100 years ago now, and it was, understand where we came from. We were primarily an extraction type of profession. As a matter of fact, it wasn't just dentists who did extractions. I think if you go back, was it barbers did? I'd have to go back into that history. But
yeah.
I believe barbers did extractions as well.
Wow.
You have a toothache, you take out a tooth. I mean, that was the beginning of dental care, and of course that goes back well beyond the time we even had barbers. So there was always the need for extraction of teeth. But as we developed into a profession which was reparative in nature, in other words, doing fillings and that type of thing, or preventive in nature, in other words, preventing yourself from getting diseases like tooth decay and periodontal disease, the two most common diseases that we get in the mouth, then of course different aspects of dentistry developed. Periodontists have only been around since the 1960s as a profession. Although there were people who practiced periodontics as early as 1910, it was really in the 1960s that we started to develop a specialty. And that specialty developed because there was the thought that we could save teeth and rather extract teeth and go to dentures. There needed to be some dedication to saving teeth. And so the two aspects of the two specialties of dentistry that save teeth are the endodontist, that's the person who does the root canal, and periodontist, the person who does the who solves the gum disease problem. And so as these specialties develop, then there is more and more and more that you can do within these specialties in order to be able to help people save teeth and save teeth much more comfortably than we were ever able to do so. But the primary treatment here is not the treatment itself. It's the identification of the problem early so you don't need guys like me. And that doesn't mean that I don't want to see you. I love seeing you. And of course, within this practice, we have my son, who's a general dentist, as well as Dr. Furtado, who's a periodontist. And so we have the opportunity of seeing patients not just who have periodontal disease, but we see patients across the spectrum. But the whole idea is to be able to minimize the care, to discover things early, for you to do things yourself in order to be able to prevent your even needing us for any major care. And that's where some of the diagnostics come in. And the primary diagnostic that we use, besides the visualization, the looking in the mouth and using the little tools that we use in order to be able to discover things, are x-rays. And we could not do the work that we do without them.
I was always thinking, though, when you think about x-rays, though, it's a little bit frightening because, when you sit down in the chair and then they load you up with this big kind of like, I don't know, it's a heavy thing. I guess it's lead filled. I don't know if that's right or not, but they put this thing on you and then everybody leaves the room and you're thinking, oh, my goodness, what's going on here? Is all this, I mean, I guess it's been around for years, so it must be safe, but there's always like a little alarm bell that kind of goes off at that moment. Is it safe?
It is safe, and just so you know, this year a group of radiation experts, as well as the American Dental Association, got together and found out the lead apron was a waste of time, and we're not using it anymore. And the thyroid collar was preventing primary radiation from getting to where we wanted it to, and so we had to take more X-rays as a result. We're not using that either. You'll also find that our assistants are no longer wearing radiation badges, and that they are holding the instrument in the mouth with you and do not leave the treatment room. It's a handheld X-ray device, and the collimation, meaning the reduction of the field of X radiation, is so good that we're no longer leaving the room. So everything that you just talked about, Kerry, we're not doing anymore.
See, that's why you got to listen to Helping Seniors Radio. You get breaking news like that, right? No, why would that not be the case? They've got everything that you used to need, all these different tools. They got it all down on your little smartphone now, and so why wouldn't the technology of X-rays and things go a little bit farther? But let me ask a question, because this, as a consumer, I understand, okay, we're going to take an X-ray because we need to see what's going on. And I hear things like bite wing X-ray, and I don't even know what that means, but there's certain terms that people will use. But then you also have a machine called that you do a CT scan. How are those related? Is that an X-ray, or what does one do and what does the other do?
Well, if we're talking about bite wing X-rays, bite wing X-ray is an X-ray of the upper tooth and the lower tooth in the same field of view. It had to do with the fact that you're biting on a tab, and half of the X-ray is going above the center line or above the bite line, and the half of the X-ray is going below the bite line. So we're not seeing the whole tooth, but we're seeing the part of the tooth that you chew on, so we can identify decay between the teeth. And the only way we can identify decay between the teeth early is to have an X-ray done. So that's the bite wing. The other is the periapical, and the periapical goes around the apex or the end of the tooth. It only gets the single tooth, not two teeth in one view. And that's used in order to be able to help diagnose abscesses and help to diagnose periodontal disease. So they have different purposes. When you have a full mouth series of X-rays, we take both bite wings so we can identify decay, as well as full mouth of periapical X-rays, so we can make sure that we see the entire tooth, so we can be more specific in our diagnosis. But to answer your question directly, the dental CT scan was introduced probably on the order of 20 years ago, and that allows us to have a three-dimensional view of the bone because we're placing dental implants within the bone. We need to see how thick that bone is, how that bone lines up with the opposing tooth, and so the CT scan gives us that opportunity. We are now in our office on our second CT scan. We got our first CT scan around 2007, 2008, something like that. And now our newer CT scan is that much better, that much more diagnostic, that's that much crisper. And because computer technology has developed the way it does, it requires less radiation than my first CT scan does. And so we've got safety by reducing the amount of radiation, which by the way, we'll talk about radiation equivalents if you'd like. But we've got safety in the reduction of radiation because the computer enhancement is so good that we don't need as much radiation in order to be able to see what we need to see.
Wow. So I guess then, as we're talking about, so basically CT is in fact an X-ray. It's just a specific type of X, or it's the configuration, or
it's a three-dimensional X-ray. So in other words, we can take an X-ray of the body, whether it's a dental CT or any CT, it gives us a three-dimensional view. We see thickness. Rather than seeing just height and width, we see thickness as well, which is very interesting because we can take a CT scan and we can come up with a simulation of your jaw on the screen so you can see your jaw. It looks like a Halloween picture, if you will, or something. So we can see you in every dimension. What's interesting with the CT scan is that with our software, we can do virtual surgery. In other words, in front of you, I can put an implant in place. Put the implant where I want to in order to be able to see if the bone is thick enough for a dental implant and whether the bone is in the right position. If it is, that's great. If not, then there's some great bone grafting techniques that we have now in order to be able to enhance the bone, increase the thickness of the bone so we have a better opportunity to place the implant exactly where it needs to be placed so you're chewing on it properly.
As you were talking about that, the image that was coming into my mind was, like if you go to an architect and you say, oh, I'm going to design a house or a building. Nowadays, they can start with like a computer model. And by the time they show you the computer model, it kind of looks like what's actually going to get built. And I'm kind of imagining, as you're talking about what the CT scan does, it's almost something kind of like that, right? Because you're envisioning like, okay, I want to be able to show the patient if I'm talking about giving them a perfect smile and this is how we're going to set things up, you're actually able to model it and show them based on the actual I guess I would call it the diagram or CT scan of that person's mouth, right?
That's exactly right, and it is a great education tool. But if it were only an education tool, that would be okay. But that's really not enough. At this point, if we're using technology the way it can and should be used, not only can we place the implant where it needs to be placed within the CT scan, but we can communicate with the laboratory and let the laboratory see what they will need to do based on where we're placing the implant. And within this office, we have our own little in-house laboratory so we can print out a model of the jaw. We can print out a surgical guide, which will place the implant exactly where it's supposed to be placed based on what we've done in the CT scan. So we can print out with a 3D printer, print out a surgical guide, which has a little cylinder within it. We can put our dental drill within that cylinder and aim it directly where we aimed it on the CT scan so that we can essentially do a no-look, if you will, implant placement because we've already done the job on the CT scan. Doesn't mean we don't look. We do look. But because it's all been designed in advance and because we have the models printed and we have the surgical guide printed, essentially it becomes a guide to put the implant in exactly the place where we intend for it to go.
Wow. So it really seems like precision is the word there. We're talking with Dr. Lee Sheldon of Solid Bite Dental. That's you can't miss them as you're heading down Sarno Road. They've been here for quite some time and long time. Love sharing this expertise. We're going to continue our conversation about why should you take dental x-rays. It's going to be coming up more. We're going to talk about that. And again, I'll bring you up to speed on all the fun tomorrow at the Residence at Zon. Stick around for the second half of Helping Seniors Radio.
Always good hearing that music on a Wednesday afternoon. It's Helping Seniors of Brevard Radio. I'm John Harper. Let's get back to the show as I introduce the Executive Director and the host of Helping Seniors of Brevard, Kerry Fink, and his special guest, Dr. Lee Sheldon. Kerry?
Hey, thank you, John Harper. Again, welcome back for the second half of the Wednesday lunchtime gathering right here at 90.3 FM, WEJF Radio. And if you're listening online at WEJF.net, thank you for continuing to listen. And for those of you who catch this as a podcast, because it's available wherever podcasts are found, thank you for joining in. And we're having a great conversation together with a longtime friend of Helping Seniors organization. He's actually volunteers his time also as a board member, but his name is Dr. Lee Sheldon. And you probably see him and his son, who has been named one of the top dentists under 40 in the entire United States, Dr. Matt Sheldon, and also Dr. Michelle Furtado, who's another excellent periodontist. And together, they really kind of like innovate and lead the way. And so we're quizzing him about dental x-rays. Welcome back, Dr. Sheldon.
Well, thank you, Kerry. It's always good to be with you. I look forward to this conversation every month.
Yeah, no, and it's an educational experience because it's an opportunity to ask questions and learn things that we usually don't get to do when we're sitting in the dentist chair. It's it's been the butt of many comedic jokes or routines, because the dentist will ask you a question while they've got all these things going on in your mouth, and you're trying to gulp up an answer or something. It can be a little tricky, but we're just talking about the fact that in the first half of the show, where you were explaining that dentist x-rays were maybe first being played around with almost 100 years ago, or maybe you said over 100 years ago. And so it's fascinating to see how far this has come from the point of it being just kind of like everybody had to leave the building. They would dress you up and get you set and say, don't move. We're just going to stick this cardboard in your mouth and don't move. And we're all leaving the building and we'll be back when this x-ray thing is done, to the point where you were telling us in the first half of the show that all of that's kind of out the window. They figured out that these things are, because of the technology improvements, everything else, they've been able to figure out this is a whole lot more safer than anybody was even thinking.
It was. And, it's interesting how far it's come in our lifetimes, because early on in our lifetimes, people would take x-rays in order to be able to make sure a shoe fits properly. And then they figured out, you can't use that kind of radiation. And so then there becomes a big concern, a justified concern, by the way. This is a justified concern in radiation or radiation safety, finding out that wasn't good for you. And then as technology develops, we find that some of the things that we traditionally did, like lead shielding and lead aprons, are actually superfluous. They aren't necessary anymore because we're able to control the x-ray beam and reduce the x-ray beam by that much that it's no longer even necessary. As a matter of fact, sometimes those lead aprons get in the way of our taking a properly diagnostic x-ray, because we get too much of that shielding in the x-ray, and then we have to repeat the x-ray, and that makes it worse for the patient. And so things change, and things always change for the better, and we're always looking to reduce the amount of exposure. But people are concerned. They come in, I don't want to have x-rays taken. It's not what I want. Understand that we are exposed to background radiation every place. You eat a banana and you have a little bit of radiation.
Oh my
you live
goodness.
in a brick house, you live in radiation. You walk down the street, you're getting radiation. And so there is something called natural background radiation, which is which we encounter no matter what. And so if we look at comparisons, because that's how we learn is by comparisons. If we look at a typical bite wing x-ray, a single x-ray, that's the equivalent of 1 day of natural background radiation. If we take a full mouth series of x-rays, it's the equivalent of 4 to 8 days of background radiation. If we take a mammogram is 3 times the radiation of a dental CT scan. So now we start to get an idea as to what the relative amounts of radiation are. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't be taking these x-rays, but when we look at dental x-rays, we've reduced the amount of radiation so much that yes, there's always a little risk, but if we're talking about relative risk, it's very low. If we take even a CT scan is the equivalent of probably 8 to 10 days of natural background radiation. If we have a big field of view, the entire skull, then it might be worth 25 days of natural background radiation. So still, we have 365 days of natural background radiation, and on the biggest field of view, which by the way we don't need the biggest field of view in our particular practice because we're looking only at the jaw, we're not looking at the head and neck. Then we're looking at a really, really low amount of radiation, which gives you the opportunity of having that safety, it gives us the opportunity of being able to diagnose properly without guessing, and then be able to apply the treatment that's necessary. The interesting thing is that there are some things that I can see much better on a CT scan than I can see with a traditional x-ray. I can see dental abscesses or trapped infections much better in a CT scan. When it comes to dental implants, my first dental implants were done without a CT scan, which meant I had to feel my way around with probes and with my fingers in order to be able to see whether there was going to be enough bone. And I was discovering a lot during the surgical procedure, which meant more time in surgery. Now, with the CT scan, we can predict everything in advance. We know the entire shape of the bone and can predict much better what you're going to need, which makes for a cleaner procedure, a quicker procedure, and a more effective procedure because we've done all the diagnostics in advance.
Wow. Yeah. Well, it makes us feel a lot better knowing that we don't leave the office, like glowing in the dark or things like that. As I guess we would always think about it, and the fact that the technology advances are so far ahead now. There's something that there's a question I wrote down. Is like, I guess the technology has gone forward a little bit because I didn't even realize there was a difference between digital x-rays and traditional x-rays. I didn't know there was such a thing as a digital x-ray. What does all that mean?
Oh, I'm glad you brought that up. That's good. Those of us who have been around for more than 20 years or maybe 25 years now, remember that we used to put film in the mouth.
Oh, yeah.
And you would have that film. And so the x-ray would be taken, and then we'd go into the dark room and we would develop the film and come out with an x-ray that we could read. Now, that film was very small. But that film requires a lot more radiation than the digital sensor radiation that we use now. So now instead of putting a film in the mouth, we put a sensor in the mouth. And that sensor will concentrate the radiation, means that we need less radiation in order to be able to see the x-ray. And then instead of having that little film, which only a dentist can read with perhaps sometimes with a microphone, with a magnifying glass, we can put it on a screen so you can see the x-ray along with us. So that reduced the radiation by about 90% over where it was when we had film.
Oh, wow.
By the way, there are better films made now, but we don't use films anymore. Haven't used films in years. But to reduce it by 90% when they came out with digital was a big deal. And that's even gotten better now. So our opportunities are there to be able to blow up an x-ray. With the CT scan, I can look at a tooth 360 degrees. I can just rotate an axis around the tooth so I can look at different parts of the tooth that I'd never be able to see otherwise, all because of digital radiography. Digital meaning computer enhanced radiography, which gives us the opportunity to see more with less radiation.
Yeah, now that you're explaining it, I'm thinking, well, sure, that's right. Because when I've been in the office and then they say, okay, we're going to take an X-ray and see what's going on here. And it's pretty much like they take it and then they're able to pull it right up there on that TV screen, that's there that you're kind of like sitting in the chair facing. And I guess that's probably helpful to the person who's trying to diagnose what's going on. But it's also good because then they can kind of point and say, well, here's, this is what's going on here. Here's what this issue is,
You're right. And you're curious. As a patient, I'd be curious. The days of saying, well, the doctor said that's what's true and therefore I'm going to do it, those days are over. And by the way, they should be over. We're about to see a renaissance or a change in the way healthcare is delivered because frankly, there's an awful lot of corruption going on, and we've got to get through that. But in order that's policy wide. If we're taking a look at you individually, you should be able to see what I see. You should be able to ask questions based on what we see, and you should be able to check what we've seen to make sure that in fact the information you're getting is correct. And the only way you can do that is to be able to see what I can see, and you should be able to understand by my explanation or by the doctor's explanation what's going on and why that's going on and why a certain treatment is recommended. All of that is so much better defined because you can now see what we can see because it's blown up to 8 inches or 12 inches rather than 1 inch or 2 inch. And you can see 1 inch or 2 inches. And so you can see what I can see because it's so well defined on the digital screen.
Yeah, which leads me to another question because I was looking through the article. Again, this article is called "Why Should You Take Dental X-Rays?" It's going to come out actually in the January edition of the Senior Scene magazine. You look in the center section, Helping Seniors. We publish 12 pages every month. John Frederickson, the publisher of Senior Scene, is so kind to allow us to kind of come along for a ride. There's like 12 or 14,000 copies he publishes each month, and it goes out to 500 different locations, kind of county-wide. And people love to pick up that magazine. It's always got beautiful artwork on the cover and all kinds of great information inside. He puts a senior calendar in there. He puts a community calendar in there. There's just always great articles and great information in there. Our president and founder, Joe Steckler, often has an article in it each month. But for us, we're always excited about those 12 pages in the center where they're kind of got a yellow border around them. And we jokingly call them the yellow pages because in the olden days, you would look to the yellow pages and let your fingers do the walking and get some good information. And so in this January edition, you're going to have the article there. But one of the things that I was skimming through the article, and I thought was kind of fascinating is apparently the X-rays help you in the diagnosis of periodontal disease. And I kind of opened the show with joking as a kid, we saw all the commercials that said, this toothpaste prevents cavities. And in our head, that was always our goal was we got to brush our teeth so we don't go to the dentist's office and they have to fill a cavity. And as I've gotten older, and especially as I've learned more about what a periodontist does, it sure seems like that's focusing on something that's almost minor relative to the overall condition of mouth health. And so the X-rays are actually part of figuring that part out too.
Yeah, I saw somebody yesterday. I can relate this to a patient I saw, and the patient had been seeking care, and she was looking for the right dentist, and I think we provided her with some answers. There are ways in which we look at teeth. One is with the periodontal probe, where we place a probe between the gum and the tooth to see how much bone loss there might be, and that's a mechanical measuring device. But the other is dental X-rays, dental radiographs, and digital radiographs, and it gives us the opportunity of seeing not only how much bone have you lost, but how much tooth is still supported by bone, which we can't see with the probe. We can only see loss we can't see what's there. So if a person has a very long roots, if I see a 7 millimeters of bone loss, if they have long roots, the teeth are very, very tight. If they only have a 9 millimeter tooth and they have 7 millimeters of bone loss, then the teeth are loose. So I'm able to see not only what's wrong with it, but also what's good about it. And if I can see a long rooted tooth, I can treat that tooth. I can stop the periodontal disease most often. Sometimes we can even grow back some of the bone that we've lost. And so we can get not only the original diagnosis, which is how much bone loss there is, but then after treatment, we can take x-rays a year later and we can see how much bone came back. The routine is, well, once you have periodontal disease, I can never grow the bone back. That's not quite true. For many people, we can grow the bone back without even doing bone grafts, but the only way we can do that is to be able to compare x-rays from time to time in order to be able to see what's actually occurred. But what's also interesting is that when we have an x-ray to look at, we're not only looking at the bone that's been lost, but also the bone that's available, particularly for dental implants. So this person came in saying, well, I know I don't have enough bone for dental implants because I heard it from such and such a dentist. Well, most people still aren't taking CT scans. We don't have to take CT scans on everybody, but for somebody who has significant disease, we do. And we look at the patient and we can see not only the bone that's been lost, but the bone that's available for dental implants. And given the fact that there's bone beyond the end of the root, there is bone in which we can use for dental implants. So she was very pleasantly surprised when I looked at the x-ray. She already knew she had loose teeth. She knew she was going to lose them. And at the end of the root, there was still another 15 millimeters of bone where I could place a dental implant. And so she does have the opportunity for dental implants, and she will be able to chew and smile again. The opportunities here are tremendous because it isn't just the reduction of radiation, which is important. Radiation safety is extremely important, but our diagnostic ability, our ability to see what the entire jawbone is as a whole and understand how we can use that to the patient's benefit means that patients can have comfort and function that they may have been told someplace else that couldn't be done, and we find out that in fact it can be done. That's actually a good pitch to have a CT scan done when you have severe disease, and have somebody read it who's competent at reading it, so that they can understand and give you some assurance that in fact some treatments that might be available to help you. If you have severe disease and you've not had a dental CT scan done, I'd say at this point it is a requirement just for you to be able to have a full appreciation as to what's going on. The second, another thing, not just reconstruction, is, and I mentioned it before, but if we look at abscesses, which is the type of disease that may require a root canal, when you have abscesses that are deep in the jawbone, those are also related to overall health problems, that inflammatory problem, that inflammation problem I was talking about before. If you have an abscess that's present, it's important to get that abscess treated. If a root canal has failed, a root canal can be retreated by a competent endodontist, and we can get that abscess gone by retreating the root canal. If necessary, we can extract the tooth, and we can get rid of the abscess that way. We don't want people sitting around with abscesses. That's an overall health problem that we're preserving by keeping an abscess tooth in the mouth. It should be clean. It should have bone around it. There should be no dark spots around the end of the root. If we do have those dark spots, they do need to be solved, not just for dental reasons, but also for overall health reasons. And the CT scan allows us to see those dark spots, those abscesses, those areas of infection, in order to be able to help you health-wise to take care of not just your mouth, but take care of or help prevent other problems from occurring in other parts of the body.
Yeah. I wanted to come back actually to one of the first parts of what you were just talking about. You were talking about the value of being able to have that CT scan. And it reminded me of something that's near and dear to us in the helping seniors world, because as a nonprofit, we can only go as far as people support us to be able to go. And it's why, it's why we have to do things which are fun, like the car raffle or things like that. But we always have a need in the organization to raise funds so that we can continue to provide the services that we do. And one of the really unique and clever ways that seems to be win-win-win is a program you guys have called Solid Bite Gives Back. And it's a program that benefits us as the charity, because when a new patient comes to your office, they make some sort of a donation. I think it's $50 or more. You can correct me if I get any of this wrong, but they make a donation of $50 or more, and then they get a full, like, 2 hour, I think you've described it as like a $700-800 really intensive package of real diagnostics, including the CT scan, all the tools that are needed so that you, from the dental medical perspective, can look at the situation and make the proper recommendations as to what steps might be helpful as you go down the road. Talk about that, because we've been talking about CT scans, and if I'm not mistaken, isn't that part of that whole program?
CT scan is part of that program. Nothing makes me feel better if we look at at our Google reviews when a patient says, "I've never had this thorough an examination." Now, part of that is the diagnostic technology, the X-ray, CT scan, and the regular X-rays. But part of it is our doctors, and our doctors spending the time to look at every aspect of the mouth, not just decay, but also the bite, periodontal disease, relationship of the upper and lower teeth, and understanding what the long term is. I think the second best thing for me is when a patient says, "I've been told I need all this work," and I look at you and I say, "No, I think all you need is cleaning." So yes, we do some of the fanciest work in town, but to be able to look at it and spend time with the patient and reassure the patient that things are all right, I think is a big part of our examination as well. And so, yeah, years ago I decided, and it was the group, because I've got a group of outstanding paraprofessionals that work under our office manager, Danielle Salmella, who's just an outstanding individual, to be able to understand what patients need. And we decided that what patients need is also what our community needs. And so we decided to work with Helping Seniors of Brevard to be able to provide a full examination. And they write a check to Helping Seniors of Brevard for $50 or more, as you said. And they get all the technology, the CT scan and the X-rays, which are the bells and whistles, but also get 3 very good doctors, well, 2, and then there's me, that can look at you and talk with you, and will spend the time with you. And it's the experience that we want you to have, and benefit Helping Seniors of Brevard at the same time. So if that isn't a win-win-win, I don't know what is.
Yeah. So if somebody wants to take advantage of that, say, "Hey, I heard you guys talking about all this tech stuff and it sounds good, and let's figure this out." How do they reach you, or how do they get more information about getting set up on that?
Just call the office at 321-259-8000. Tell them that you heard me, Dr. Lee Sheldon, or Kerry, Fink, or anybody on radio, and that you want the Helping Seniors Brevard special, and any of our staff members will get you set up for that.
And that number one more time:
321-259-8000.
Man, not hard to remember. By the way, if you ever miss a number, sometimes people are driving along and they're like, "Oh, I wish I was pulled over so I could, jot this thing down." A good number to just remember is the Helping Seniors number. It's 321-473-7770. I'm going to give it again in just a moment so you can grab a pencil and jot it down. But the reason is because people will call us. They'll hear a radio broadcast, or they might catch one of the TV shows, and they'll say, "Oh, that was really interesting, but I couldn't, I was coming out of the grocery store," or whatever the story is, "and I need to get this information." And so they'll call the helpline, and then Karen, or one of our excellent group of volunteers, will make sure that, what they're asking about, they can get in contact with. So again, if you ever miss anything, you say, "Oh, that went by kind of fast, I didn't catch that," always give us a call, 321-473-7770. And I'm going to say that number one more time in a moment because that's also the number to RSVP for tomorrow's fun. You know, Dr. Sheldon, we do a thing. We really need to get you on the calendar to come in and talk at one of our fourth Thursday. We do two things on Thursdays, and it's actually going to go to three in early 2025. But we do a Knowledge College for Aging event right there at Joe's Senior Resource Center on the fourth Thursday of each month at 10 a.m. That's designed to help you with your aging plan. And then we do a fourth Thursday wellness series, which is designed to keep you at the tip top of wellness. And this kind of thing would be perfect for that. So we'll have to talk and get that on the calendar for early 2025. But this month, because really the fourth Thursday puts us smack into the middle of the holiday season. So what we're going to do is have on tomorrow, which would actually be the second Thursday, but who's counting? Thursday, December 12th, we're going to be right there at Zon Beachside. And we're going to be at the residences at Zon Beachside. It's 1898 South Patrick Drive, Indian Harbor Beach. If you've ever been out that direction, you know Zon Assisted Living and Memory Care has for years been kind of like the tippy top of tech and expertise in assisted living. And it really is like the kind of go-to place for that. But then they decided they really want to make at a lifestyle community. So what they did is they built this beautiful new facility called the Residences Zon, which is for independent living. And it is absolutely a showcase kind of facility. And last year was literally, we were like almost their grand opening because they were just getting everything put together. But they have this beautiful rooftop swimming pool, little restaurant out there, beautiful lounge area. And they're allowing us to take that over tomorrow, 10:30 a.m. to 12 noon. So it's a Thursday morning, kind of a drop-in holiday festivities. We encourage you to come on by. We would like for you to RSVP so the wonderful chefs at Zon Beachside know how to correctly plan for who's coming. So you can call us again at that number 321-473-7770 and make a plan to join us. We're going to have we call him Uncle Nick, but he's a wonderful, he's someplace between a guitar player, a strolling minstrel, and a terrific entertainer. But I know he's going to be there with Santa cap on, and we're just going to have a great musical time. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're calling it Food, Fun, and Song, but it's the Helping Seniors Holiday Fun, and it happens tomorrow, 10:30 a.m. to 12 noon, right there at the Residences on at Zon Beachside, right there, 1898 South Patrick Drive, Indian Harbor Beach, Florida. It's going to be a lot of fun, Dr. Sheldon. And I want to thank you for joining us on today's program. And again, Dr. Sheldon, one more time, if somebody wants to find out about Solid Bite, what's the number for that?
We would love to see you for an examination, 321-259-8000.
Wonderful. Well, that's about the time we have for today's show. So we hope that you will have a wonderful time tomorrow when you join us at Helping Seniors Holiday Fun at the Residences on Beachside. And of course, we will be right back here for Helping Seniors Radio every Wednesday lunchtime, 12 noon to 1 p.m. See you then.